and I was curious to see that despite you saying that this is a bad, not, you didn't say it was a bad season, but you said it was a bit of a dip for Auckland City, and yet here they are in the National League finals against Birkenhead United. So like a mediocre season for Auckland City is making the National League finals with like a 17-year-old phenom and Stipe Jukic and all the other stuff that goes with Auckland City FC football. So like how, we will talk a lot of football later on in the show, but I'm curious, like, how did Auckland City FC get into the National League final when you're saying it's a down season?
Well, it's a down season because they almost didn't get to the National League Grand Final. They lost with last-minute goals conceded in consecutive weeks at home against Western Springs and Wellington Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. So losing 2 games in a row for Auckland City is automatically a bit of a freaky one. To do it in a way where it's like they blew it, not being able to control the game at the end, which is something they're normally so good at, that's also pretty freaky. And then the fact that both those 2 defeats were at home at Kiwatia Street, even more freaky. But then, of course, Auckland City being Auckland City, when they needed a last-minute goal against Napier City Rovers last week, they got one. When they needed a win against Coastal Spirit in the final round, knowing that just a win in general would see them through, thanks to that Napier City win, they not only got one, they got one very comfortably. They got one off the back of Maya Bevan scoring a 151-second hat-trick. It was like 19th to 21st minute, 151 seconds between the first goal hit in the back of the net and his third goal hit in the back of the net. It was crazy. And that is what Auckland City does. Fortunately / unfortunately, depending on which side you're looking at, they just like, they find a way. And they did this a lot through the winter season as well. Like they would have these wobbles. They've lost Cam Howison to Auckland FC. They've lost Liam Gillian to Auckland FC. They've had to bring in a few different players along the way, like bringing them in mid-season. That's always going to take a little bit of adjustment. Plus, guys like Justin Lagos, Kalen Gould, they're not necessarily the obvious Auckland City pass it to death type of players. Like those are 2 very direct, run at them kind of guys. Stipe Jukic also falls in that category as a youth team player who's come through there. So, like, you know, a little bit different look for Auckland City. I actually kind of love it. I think they've needed a bit more of that variety for a long time. But yeah, you know, it hasn't necessarily been the flawless control, just winning 2-0 every week that we've seen from them in the past. They got challenged, but in getting challenged, they rose to the challenge and overcame the challenge and going back to another National League Grand Final. So it is a down year for them, but their version of a down year is finishing second instead of finishing first and still making the final and possibly still winning.
And still producing some of the best Kiwi footballers in Aotearoa. However, their fellow finalists, Birkenhead United, they're a bit new to this level. Not the National League level, but the competing with Auckland City. Because last few years, off the top of my head, we've had Wellington Olympic have been the team that's kind of joined Auckland City at the top of the domestic footballing ranks. And I'm just connecting dots here because I've seen Birkenhead rise in recent years. And then I'm watching the Wellington Phoenix and I'm watching Corbin Piper do a fantastic job at right back as part of I love this young group of Wellington Phoenix footballers that we've got there. And Corbin Piper was someone who stood out to me, not quite as much as Isaac Hughes. About the same as Nathan Walker. You did tell me that Nathan Walker's got very quick feet and he's a very lively attacking player. And that was evident for the Wellington Phoenix in their win on the weekend. But Corbin Piper coming out of Birkenhead United, going down to the Wellington Phoenix, and he was very impressive, playing like a right back in their, I think that was when they went to the back four. So am I correct in my knowledge of domestic football that Corbin Piper came from Birkenhead United and then went down to the Wellington Phoenix?
Yeah, he did. He played for Birkenhead the last time they were in the National League. I think that was 2 years ago. And then last year they didn't make the National League and he was away playing football in Ireland. And then he came back this year and Birkenhead like was a big presence in Birkenhead qualifying for the National League, playing kind of as an attacking midfielder, by the way. That's more his known position. When he signed with the Phoenix, they decided they wanted to convert him into a centre back, and he played I think three of the first four games for the reserves, and then after that he was going so well at centre back. It's like, well, you don't need to play any more reserve team football. So David Ball ended up playing more reserve team games than Corbin Piper did this season. The Corbin Piper's just been hanging around the first team. Yeah, got to go at right back on the weekend, which is different, but it's not any more different than a midfielder turning into a centre back, turning into a right back. Like, he's got the skill set to be able to do those things. And midfielder to right back is not an uncommon, let's get you into the first team picture and here's a position you might be able to do a job in kind of role. We've actually seen that already with Matt Sheridan with the Phoenix, who used to be he was converted into a right back with the reserve team. So it wasn't like he got to the first team and they were doing this, but he was a midfielder before that. So yeah, Corbin Pipe is a fantastic player, and I love the way he goes about it. I think he's super strong. He's a great athlete. He's very good in the air, and he's very good with his feet. He does score goals, but he scored goals more as an attacking midfielder. Now he's just flawlessly converted himself into a defensive player and is doing that fantastically. So sweet as. But also Birkenhead United, yeah, they've not like they've been in national leagues before. They've not been they're not like a traditional powerhouse club necessarily, but over the last 10 years they've been one of the better teams for sure. They won the 2016 and 2018 Chatham Cup finals, so they've got a bit of top end pedigree about them, but very different team. So I did actually look up their 2018 Chatham Cup final, which was against Western Suburbs. So it was right before Western Suburbs. Those guys all went and played, like the All A Academy guys all went and played for Eastern Suburbs and won the National League. So you had like Nando Pinecker and Matt Garbett and Marko Stamanic and guys like this, very young versions of them because this is 2018, but they were playing for Western Suburbs in that Chatham Cup final. I think the only player left for Burko is Luke Jorgensen, their midfielder. So near complete turnover for them since then, but like they lost their best player to the Wellington Phoenix and then finished first in the National League and made to make the National League Grand Final. So that's been an incredible journey from them as well. So yeah, looking forward to a couple of good National League finals on Sunday afternoon. That one is.
Who's in the women's final?
The women's final is Auckland United versus Waterside Karori, and these two teams fit in very clearly to a couple of those trends that we talk about with a lot of sports, where it's like in a league where there are a lot of very young players, a lot of sort of developmental ideas going on across many of the women's National League teams. Auckland United and Waterside Karori are probably the two oldest teams. And they're the two teams with the most sort of ex-professional experience in there. With Auckland United, you got Chloe Knight, you got Saskia Vosper, ex-Phoenix players. You also got a couple of really good sort of imports there. Hannah Mitchell, their goalkeeper. Kaylee Ward is a striker who's been around the national scene for quite a while, but is American. Yuma Harashima in midfield. So really solid base there. Some talented young players coming through. Charlotte Roach has had a breakthrough season up front for them, scoring goals. And in Waterside Karori, you got a few sort of like well-known, been around the traps kind of thing, domestic Kiwi players like Sarah Morton, Renee Bacon type players. You've also got some very good, just especially for them, really good imports. Nikki Furukawa, I think Canadian winger, and then a bunch of Americans. Kendall Pollock scoring all their goals up front. Emma Starr in midfield has played professionally in a bunch of countries in Europe. I think most notably she had a little stint with Crystal Palace in the second tier of the English stuff. I couldn't find out how many games she played or however that went, but I know she played a lot in Ireland as well before that. She's borderline been the MVP of the whole league. A creative midfield player who's been scoring goals and setting up goals and winning the ball, passing it around, all this stuff. So you've got, the two veteran teams with the most international presence, have been the two best teams. It kind of stacks up. It makes sense when you look at that. But the, the two best teams are the two best teams, no matter how you go about building those squads. Then they have both been undefeated leading into the grand final. I think they're undefeated. Haven't watched Waterside Karori's game from this week yet, but yeah, that's a matchup that was decided a week in advance. Those two teams, I won't say cruise through, but they were clearly like there was them and then there was distance between third, fourth, fifth kind of thing. And for Auckland United, that's especially good because they won the Kate Shepherd Cup final. They won the NRFL Premiership. They won the Oceania Champions League. They've already won 3 trophies this season. They're going for a 4th trophy, which would be winning everything, which I think Auckland City men did do a couple years ago. They had a season where they won the quadruple. But Auckland United, they're undefeated. So they've got 1 game left to try to complete a quadruple and to go an entire calendar year undefeated. Pretty crazy. But yeah, if anyone's going to stop them, Waterside Karori are probably the best set up team to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens on Sunday there as well.
We also had a triple whammy of A-League fixtures, all of which were 1-0 wins, I believe. And I also believe that the Wellington Phoenix woman was the best win because they needed the win the most. They got off the bottom of the A-League ladder, so shout out to them. First win of the season, big up. The way I was thinking about framing these 2 wins in the men's A-League is which team has had or displayed or showed or just had the best Kiwi contributions, the most interesting Kiwi contributions. And obviously, Auckland FC, they got Alex Paulson in goal. So that's great. You've also got Nando Peineke, as you said before, very good central defender. You got Gillian and Rogerson on the 2 flanks. I thought they were pretty cool as well. But I can't go past the Wellington Phoenix and the contributions of their Kiwis, especially because their Kiwis are younger and they're on the rise, aside from Costa Barbarouses and what he was able to do, then joined by Marco Rojas to set up the goal. And it was, the way that game played out was very interesting as someone who's still building up my football repertoire, because Costa Barbarouses was kind of a lone trooper up the top of the formation in the first half. And then I think he went to the left, more of a midfieldy type of role, but still pushing forward in the second half. So that was great to see. I thought Costa Barbarouses was the best player on the field for the Phoenix. Obviously, Alex Rufer does his thing. But what I loved about this win for the Wellington Phoenix, and as far as ranking these 3 wins go, I think the Wellington Phoenix women needed the win the most. So their win was first for most impressive. Then Wellington Phoenix men second, then Auckland FC third. No disrespect here, I'm just ranking 3 very good wins for that put Kiwi football in the spotlight once again, dominating the A-League. But the way the Wellington Phoenix men dealt with adversity, because you had Oscar Van Haddam playing right wing back in the first half, and to the best of my knowledge, he isn't necessarily first, second, third choice starting right back for the Wellington Phoenix. But he had a solid effort. He gave it his all, but you could see that he wasn't quite pushing upfield. But he had a crack. And then you had Nathan Walker, who I think he might have started in the same role on the left. He was like a left wing back, but then he started to get further and further up the field, especially when they changed the formation, moving into the second half. You mentioned Sheridan, and we've got Isaac Hughes in the center of defense as well. I just thought all those dudes put in big shifts, big efforts. Who came on? Then it was Corbin Piper coming on to replace Oscar Van Haddam. That was far from his full strength Wellington Phoenix team, but the contributions of the young Kiwis, I thought, elevated them. And shout out to Oluwayemi. He's improved a lot in over the past few weeks. So want to big up Oluwayemi, his saves, his distribution. Sure, he's not Alex Paulson, but he's doing a pretty damn good job of plugging that hole. And what he does as the starting goalkeeper. The most impressive to me was Isaac Hughes. He is physically, and the way I think you can tell a good football defense by how they control the ball when it goes over the back line. And there was one instance where Isaac Hughes, as soon as he realized the ball was going out, or was at least going close to the back line, which was like 6 meters out from the back line, he just starts shielding the ball. And he just shielded the ball perfectly to earn his team a goal kick. And all those fine details are crystal clear with the Wellington Phoenix, especially in those younger players, because they have now been entrenched in the Chiefy system, the Chiefy way of coaching and playing football. All these coaches that we're talking about here are bloody impressive. Chiefy's impressive. Corica is impressive. Paul Temple's quite impressive as well.
Steve Corica, yeah.
But the details when you're watching Hughes, the details when you're watching Piper. Van Hatten was buggered after 10 minutes, so I wasn't really tapped into his details. You got Nathan Walker, who was very lively on the left, and it's all led by someone like Costa Barbarouses, someone like Alex Rufa. But yeah, I don't know if you got any other examples of stuff that like Hughes was doing. I thought Sheridan was classy in that role as well. Like, these are young footballers who look comfortable at this level, but also tough conditions. Like, the pitch was a bit iffy. It was stinking hot. Like, that was adversity for the Wellington Phoenix. They're down on troops. They're over in Australia for a home game. Tough conditions. Gritty game. But those dudes all executed their role, and they were pretty stoic. How about that? They were stoic in defense. And talking around it, Hughes was my favorite player from the weekend in all three of those games. But it was a very impressive effort from the young Wellington Phoenix team in a tough spot.
Yeah, Isaac Hughes has impressed me so much throughout the whole season. I don't think he's had anything even close. I don't think he's had anything worse than a great game so far this season. Like, even in the Auckland FC loss, I think he was one of the better next players. And like, because remember, that game was just that was the game I predicted it would be 0-0, and then for like 80 minutes it just felt like a 0-0, and then all of a sudden there was the Oluwayemi mistake, and then Auckland FC scored another one as the Phoenix had to gamble on trying to find an equalizer. That's how those ones often go. But for most of that game, that was a solid 0-0 kind of performance, and that just adds to what the Vicks are doing here as well. Like, they've only conceded it's like Auckland FC 4 clean sheets in a row. Alex Paulson 4 clean sheets in a row plus 3 clean sheets for the All Whites in the same span of time. Just, yeah. 7 senior games in a row without conceding a goal. I worked it out in the newsletter. He is up to, and of course this is not including the Olympics because that's under 23s, and I'll specify that when I throw out the stat as I keep tracking it. But I know that's convenient, but also that is, literally speaking, we're talking about senior football here, and that's what it is. 648 minutes without conceding a goal in senior football for club and country. You could actually add another 45 minutes on that if you wanted to count the A-League All-Stars game, but given the status of the Newcastle team that they played against, I don't think that counts as senior football either. So I'm not going to. 648 minutes since Alex Paulson last conceded a goal. Their defense has been spectacular. Like, Nando Peineke has been so good for them. Dan Hall, I thought, was absolutely brilliant on the weekend. Like, the way they defended was spectacular. And that was what won them that game. I know Guillermo Mai got that goal and they were able to hang on. But like, second half against MacArthur, Auckland FC were, I won't say clinging on, but the reason they weren't clinging on is because of how good and well organized and combative and aggressive and proactive their defense was. Things that it's quite a bit in common there with what the Wellington Phoenix did last year as a defensive team. but also because that's getting such a spotlight, it's easy to overlook the fact that the Wellington Phoenix, who everyone reasonably thought, for correct reasons, this is completely understandable. I was one of them. I was saying in preseason, I think they need to get better in attack because they're not going to be able to be as good in defense. I'm not sure if they're as good in defense without Finn Sermon or Alex Paulson, but the fact that they're as close to what they did last season as they are, they've kept 3 clean sheets in 5 games. They've only conceded 3 goals. 2 of them were late against Auckland FC. So against the Aussie teams, they've only conceded once in 360 minutes themselves. That's kind of crazy. And I won't say the main reason for it is Isaac Hughes, but he's the main reason why they haven't regressed nearly as much as maybe predicted. And Hughes, because he's been able to come in and do a lot of the same stuff that Finn Sermon did. Not all of the same stuff that Finn Sermon did. I don't think Isaac Hughes is anywhere near as good of a header of the football, whereas Sermon would just like launch into those things and you put the ball in the air, he wins that thing 9 times out of 10. Hughes is a lot more like get up and challenge it for it, but he can be beaten in those situations. However, he's better on the ball than Finn Sermon. Like he's better at passing out from the back. He's better at picking midfielders and just making accurate, good decisions there. Both of them, I don't think we got to see a whole lot of it from Finn Sermon because he never actually scored for Wellington Phoenix. He had that one goal that should have been his goal that was turned into an own goal scandalously, but Isaac Hughes definitely popped up with a few goals for the reserves during his time. And those two actually spent a lot of time playing together as the centre-back partnership for the reserves over previous years. And Hughes, I think, is a year or 2 older, or at least was like an established first-team player before Sermon was. And when Sermon got the elevation to the first team, like that made sense because he was the player who had the higher upside, but he wasn't necessarily as consistent as Hughes. And so, I was a little worried there that Hughes might fall through the cracks. And then he gets a contract last year, senior contract. But surprisingly, this is when we were learning that actually the Phoenix are just going to give all those fringe contracts to their best academy players. Like this is the new structure of the club. Okay. Hughes was one of the early beneficiaries of that, but he played a few times last season. He mostly in back 3, so because Sermon wouldn't have started every game, it wasn't like he was coming in for either of them at any point. But he would pop up as the left-sided centre back a few times. Sometimes it was Albie Kelly-Heald, but when they went with that switch, he was there. Little bit more of a but can he do this week in, week out? Can he be can he do it in a back 4, which we've seen them alternate between a 3 and a 4, even within the game on the weekend they did that. Hughes has been flawless. Like the stuff he does so far, it's great. Like I say, not as good in the air, but he's just as good at hurling, just as brave at hurling himself in front of shots, and he's good tackler. He's very composed at the back there. He was actually a captain for quite a while of the reserve team, so he's got those, the personality, the leadership credentials. I just think he's had an outstanding season so far, and okay, I'll rephrase what I was saying about the main difference or whatever. I think he was the main variable in terms of if they're going to be able to get close to what they did last season as a defensive unit, because they replaced Alex Paulson with an import, right? So at least if they were pulling out stops there, they were going for the best possible goalkeeper they could find. Tim Payne's still there. Sam Sutton's going to be healthier this year. If anything, he missed the game of the weekend with an injury, but if anything, he should have a better season than he did before. Scott Wooden, actually, one difference that you've seen from last season to this season is Finn Sermon was always the right-sided centre-back and Scott Wooden was playing left-sided centre-back. Isaac Hughes is playing left-sided centre-back, even though I think he is right-footed. And Scott Wooden is now the right-sided centre-back, which I actually think probably suits Wooden slightly better. So that might be another aspect there. But Isaac Hughes was the guy where it's like, but is he ready to be this type of player? And from what we've seen from the first 5 games, absolutely. Like he's ready to be an A-League starter week in, week out, playing at a very, very high level. And that is why the Phoenix have been able to sustain what they've done so far, defensively at least. And we've seen, I think we got it in the second half here. We got it in the first half against Central Coast. Like we're starting to see, especially when they play with that back 4 with a few more options further forward in support of Costa, so he's not completely isolated like he was in the first half against Melbourne Victory, which he still, I agree, I thought best player on the field, Costa Barbarouses. I think he was even when the job that he was being asked to do was borderline thankless, he did it as well as like the way he was holding the ball up, just dropping into pockets, collecting it, turning on the ball. He's not a guy who's just going to stand there with his back to the defender and shield him away like Chris Wood or someone might. Costa's got to move. He's got to duck and weave if he's going to hold that ball up. And he was doing that stuff fantastically. Remember, he was like battling through an injury at the All Whites camp a week ago as well. It's not like you wouldn't have known it watching him in this game. For he would, yeah, an amazing game from him. But when he started to get a bit more support, when he had the wingers around him, you started to see the Phoenix need to flex a little bit more attacking poise and creativity and just variability and all these things. Like they look like a team that has like that has more. You started to see the pathway to how they're going to grow into becoming a much better attacking team. Like you started to see the direction that they're heading in. And in particular, when you had Marco Rojas out there as well, being able to pull a few strings, even limited stuff from Rojas in this one, but enough to get a glimpse of it. Paulo Retre has made a massive difference to their midfield as well, as someone who can like link the defense into the attack. He has been brilliant at that, and it's no coincidence that the 2 games he's started have been the Phoenix's 2 best performances, Central Coast and this one here against Victory. We're getting glimpses of how they're building towards that. But so far, the reason they've had a really good start to the season is because they've been able to sustain what they did defensively last year. And that has a lot to do with how well Isaac Hughes has settled into being a first 11 A-League player.
You can watch that first half on the weekend and be like, yeah, the Wellington Phoenix attack is, let's say it's developing.
And remember, this was without Tim Payne or Sam Sutton, so their 2 best fullbacks / wingbacks, which, as we've seen already this season, are really essential parts of how they attack, is those guys bombing forward.
But also, it seems to be completely by design. Like, Chiefy just tinkers with the formation, bang, they got a different look. Like, yeah, you start the game this way, seems to be like you're just trying to shut up shop, counter-attack, but then it's not like they play 90 minutes of the same style. So you can't watch the first 30 minutes and be like, wow, the Wellington Phoenix attack sucks. Because A, Chiefy's going to change the formation. And B, especially in that game, suddenly you bring in Marco Rojas off the bench. And everything changes. Like it's a interesting dynamic for the Phoenix, I reckon, because there are games. There have been games, there will be games, when it's the youngsters coming off the bench. But the game we saw on the weekend, it was the youngsters who started, and then they brought a bit of oomph off the bench with Rojas. I think Altai came off the bench, Piper
Stefan Kolikovsky.
Yes, it was Kolikovsky. That's the one who I was thinking of. So you bring in 2 solid A-League veterans off the bench who are both attacking players. So, as I'm talking through it, I'm like, the Wellington Phoenix, they got so many different looks, so many different formations, so many different combinations. I don't think you can say they're good or bad at, or they're bad at attacking, good at defending, or they only play this way, they're only a counter-attacking team, when Chiefy has shown so many different ways of playing football. And that's just a cool thing to watch for a Kiwi football fan. Like, I don't want to put the Phoenix on a pedestal ahead of Auckland FC or anything like that, because I find so much enjoyment in watching how both teams play football. Even stuff like you were saying about Paulo Retre, watching him and Rufa and how they cover angles when they're working back in defense. Like, if the ball goes wide, your backline sinks into the box, but then your center midfielders, they're working back to the top of the edge of the box to cut off passing angles and set up that defensive structure. Like, you can't just switch off. You can't just lose your players that are bombing forward as well. And for Auckland FC, that's more like, is it Verstrada? That type of
Louis
dude?
Verstrada does fantastic job of exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah. So both teams, yes, we've talked about the goalies. They've got good goalies, good shot stoppers who are obviously good communicators as well. Auckland FC, who's the Fijian Australian guy,
Dan
international.
Hall. Yeah.
Like, he's playing so well now. They're talking about him as an Australian option in the commentary.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, they were.
like, that's pretty good. And you got Nando, as you said. There are good players in defensive positions, but the way both teams defend is what makes them so good defensively, because everyone else is cutting off angles. They're getting into the formation. They know when to put the pressure on. They know when to sit back. And if you just listen to Chiefy, like, Auckland FC don't have their press conferences on YouTube, but you can listen to Chiefy talking football, and like, I just learn about football listening to him. So the way he
educating experience when he speaks.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know what more to say. It's just so much fun football. Auckland FC, it seemed like Gillian had a bit more pop returning from All Whites
confidence duty after his first All Whites cap. That would make sense. I will add on Chiefy and what you're saying about the Phoenix being able to switch between tactics just in game as well. Like, it's not just a game to game. We've got a week to work on how we're going to approach. Okay, we might change the formation, or we'll change the roles of these players within the formation, work on this over the next 7 days. And then it's like, no, they're able to switch things on the fly. Like, they're able to switch things at halftime, sure, in this game, but they could also do that. Like, it was a different look when Rojas came on in the second half, midway through the second half. Like, and he said this all along. He said he wants versatile players who can play multiple positions. He's going to ask his players to play multiple positions within the same game. Like, different scenarios, you will be expected to do a different role, kind of thing. And this is a lot of what that looks like. And I really, like I was saying about starting to get glimpses of what they're building towards, particularly with the ball attacking, how they're going to score goals. I really feel they're scratching the surface of this from what we've seen so far. Like, this is tip of the iceberg stuff. I think they're going to be ambitious, and I don't think it's always going to work. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be something where the full vision ever becomes viewable or whatever. Viewable vision. I think that works. Keeping the sight metaphor going. But this is what they're building towards. And you always aim for better than what you can achieve, because that's how you push forward, right? That's how you get better than what you are currently right now. So I think I think they're tip of the iceberg stuff from what we've seen in terms of their tactical versatility so far. And a lot of that is just because guys like Rojas, Kolakovsky, Retre have spent Sutton, Payne as well currently. Like, they've had a lot of injuries, and they've not really been able to put out their full strength first 11 so far. So I think there's tricks up the sleeve that we haven't even considered yet, I would imagine, because they're just not there yet. It's one step at a time. They're building out this thing, and we've only, like I say, I feel like they've only scratched the surface so far of what they're hoping to achieve, what they're aiming to achieve. Whether they get there or not, there's more to come.
And you saw it like with Costa, because he started in a striker position.
For sure.
And then Kolakovsky came on to like the left midfielder position, but then Kolakovsky and Costa Barbarossa swapped positions. You had two dudes who seem like they aren't wingbacks. They can do a job.
It's starting wingbacks with Nathan Walker and Oscar Van Hattem, who are both attacking players. So that probably goes to what I was saying about them being... those wingbacks being important attacking roles within the squad, is that he picked two wingers to play wingback rather than two defenders to play wingback, where it's sort of a role where you do both of those things. So I was actually hoping to see Taechuan Loke debut. He was on the bench again. Been really excellent for the reserves for the last 2 years, and he's a fullback who can play on either side, but very much more of a fullback. He is a very good attacking fullback, but he's a fullback. He's not a wing back. He's not a winger. You wouldn't really play him. Well, he could play wing back, but you wouldn't play him as a winger, whereas Van Hattem and Walker, that is their primary position. This was them playing deeper than usual. So, yeah, that was very much... it felt like maybe a little bit of a tactical compromise. It's like we uh, don't have the main options there, but so we can't pick the all-rounder type guy in that role. So do we pick a batter or a bowler? So they went with batters. They went with the guys who were going to try score some runs / score some goals.
But Walker changed roles during the game.
He did, because in the second half when they changed formation, I think Sheridan was starting at right centre back, and then he becomes just the right back. Van Hannem got subbed off. That's what it was. Van Hannem was subbed off, so they bring on an attacker. But then, Nathan Walker moves up to Sheridan. Actually, I think went to left back. Yeah, that was it. Sheridan goes to left back. Corbin Piper comes on at right back. That's how they did it, with Van Hannem going off, and then Walker moves from left wing back. He moves up to left wing until I think it must have been Kolakowski who replaced him.
Yeah, so all that stuff is happening during the game. It's not like we're going to play football entering this game this way. There's so many different ways of playing football mid-game. Going back to Auckland FC, Gillian hit the pop. I saw like Rogerson's throwing in big efforts. I saw one time where like Rogerson won a tackle kind of on the left side, but in the Auckland FC defensive half. And then it was like a physical contest. And then Gillian got the ball on the left. So those dudes are ripping in. Anything we haven't discussed with Auckland FC that caught your attention aside from Gillian's obvious All Whites mana boost?
Well, I think it's the defensive solidity, but we kind of already mentioned that. I talked about how good Nano Painik is playing, and do I have it here somewhere? Painika is second in the A-League for clearances per 90 minutes, 9.8 clearances per 90 minutes. He is third in the A-League for shots blocked per 90 minutes with 1.8. That is those are inflated numbers at the start of the season. It's not just that you'd expect that to change. I think even Steve Corica would very much hope that to change, because you don't want to have to be doing that much defending. For context, Finn Sermon last season led the league in clearances per 90, and that was with 5.8 per 90 minutes, which is considerably less than 9.8 that Painik is doing so far. But that tells you. And also, Finn Sermon was second in blocks per game, which I think is very much, that stacks up for Finn Sermon, right? You just think of him defending for that Phoenix team, of him just like hurling his body in front of shots and trying to block stuff. So Painik is doing what Finn Sermon did last year, in effect, for Auckland FC. Like, he's playing like that, and Dan Hall's been awesome alongside him. Dan Hall was, I already said this, but Dan Hall was fantastic in the game against MacArthur. The defense is what won them. We mentioned Louis Verstrada and how well he's playing in what I think internationally is known as the Alex Rufer role. At this point, Verstrada's coming in and he's doing those things. Guillermo Mai getting a goal set up by Felipe Gallegos as well. So a couple of the imports combining an attack, which is something we hadn't necessarily seen maybe enough of to this point. They also feel very much like a work in progress in attack, but a little bit of a different way, because whereas we're getting glimpses of what the Phoenix are building towards, Auckland FC is starting from scratch. Phoenix are in the second year with a head coach where they've got all of the information they had, all the experience they had last season, and they're building on top of that and evolving things and trying to come up with a few different ideas. But Auckland FC are starting from scratch, have built a fantastic defensive platform, but I don't think they have the same scope to become an amazing attacking team unless it's out of individual brilliance, which maybe it will be. Like, maybe Guillermo Mai's got that first goal now, just going to start banging them in all the time. Who knows? But I don't think they're necessarily built tactically to be that type, like to do anything special in attack. But like the Wellington Phoenix last year, you don't have to be. If you're keeping clean sheets most games and scoring a goal per game, well, you keep winning games, as Auckland FC have proven to this point.
Also, shout out Cam Howison. I'm always impressed with Cam Howison stepping up from Auckland City FC, stepping up from National League football to just be part of the engine room with Auckland FC. And we've talked about it playing more attacking midfielder, more defensive midfielder. Like, he just does everything in the midfield for Auckland FC as a homegrown talent. Quickly
Little
here to
cameo
Wellington.
as well for my boy Louis Toomey.
Oh, Louis
Second
Toomey came
appearance
on.
in the A-League. That's always good.
He just always finds, like, I've seen 2 games from him now, and he just bears forward both games.
He's a slippery one as well. Like he seems like he's hard to tackle. He's a scrapper too. So um he's from Napier originally. He definitely played for Hawke's Bay before he moved to the Wellington Phoenix Academy. So he's got a bit of that ruggedness about how he plays, even though he is someone who is quick. He likes to dribble, he likes to take on defenders, but also they stick a foot and try to take the ball away. He's sticking a foot right back in, trying to stop them from doing that. Like he'll fight through the tackles as well as trying to skip past them. So, yeah, good stuff from Louis Toomey. And we haven't even seen him shooting yet. His shooting is excellent. He will just take a pop from wherever, and he hits the ball very well.
Wellington Phoenix women had a win. Am I correct in my observation that Maya McCutcheon she seemed to play a more prominent role for the Wellington Phoenix women's team? Because I'd seen her being played I think she had a game at centre back recently. It seemed a bit more defensive, whereas this game she was further up the field, getting more touches, more involved, and to be honest, they won, so it worked.
Yeah, she was she was allowed to play the midfield role that she was brought to play, basically, in this game, because just the way the setup was, they've struggled with injuries at the back, and also the first half of the first game was so shocking that that was the first time she had to drop back and sit in center defense as well to sort things out there. Not ideal, but I will say, apart from that, they conceded 4 goals in the first half of the first game of the season, right? Since then, they've conceded 2 goals in 3.5 games. So the defensive import is still to arrive, who hopefully might be ready for some part of the next game, but we'll see how that goes. That's Olivia Kelly, coming over from America. Went to the same school as Isabel Cox, by the way. I don't think they would have overlapped because she only did a grad year there. She went to a different school for her main degree, but that was NC State, it was the same school that Katie Bowen once went to. And listening to a podcast this one, I think it might also have been the same school that Michael Jordan went to. So if you're going to the school that Michael Jordan went to, I think you'll find out about it. So Katie Bowen would know. Someone can ask her. Yeah, Maya McCutcheon, though, here was actually able to play in the midfield properly. Like proper midfield in a game where the Phoenix were competitive and keeping some possession. And a lot of the reason they were keeping possession is because she kept winning it for them. She just made tackle after tackle after tackle, which she's shown from the start that she's got that ability. Like she can scrap too. She can win those contested balls. She reads the play very well, gets a few interceptions on top of that. She also scored a goal in this game, which is immensely important because that's their first goal from open play that wasn't an own goal. They got an own goal and a penalty in the first game, blanked 2 games in a row, and then she got this one here. Set up by Olivia Ferguson, who kind of should have just scored it herself, but shanked it a little bit, but sweet as, take it how it comes. Olivia Ferguson also, very feisty striker. I think that's quite important. You're seeing a bit of mongrel about how she plays. Like she's not just turning up as an import to try to score some goals, hanging on the end of moves. She's out there trying to win the ball back and really make things happen, chasing down lost causes and these kind of things, which I think the Phoenix need a bit of that because they are quite a tactical team. They try to think like a process-driven team, and sometimes you need to balance that out with some of that feistiness. So to see them getting that from the imports is great. And I toyed with the idea in the newsletter. It's too early to say, but I'm kind of wondering if this might end up being a better import haul than they had last season. I'm leaning towards it will be, but we'll have to see what Kelly does when she arrives as well, because we haven't even seen all the imports yet, but we're getting there. Yeah, Maya McCutcheon, best player on the pitch in that game. Like the defensive work in midfield and also popping up with a goal and some decent passing stuff. Like she's got a bit more about her technically than she'd shown in previous games, mostly just because she hadn't had a chance to show it in previous games. And that was a massive victory. Like you said at the start of the football chat, probably the biggest win of those 3 the most needed, and also I would argue the best performance, I think, to build into what they did. McCutcheon probably helped by having Daisy Brazendale starting alongside her as well, so they had 2 sort of defensive minded midfielders. It gave them a little bit more balance there, largely because Anneli Longo was out injured because she got her face smashed in the previous game, and she was there on the sideline with bruises like all the way down half of her face. Where there's a little team photo with the fans afterwards, and Anneli Longo's standing there with Grace Jale, who also got a blood nose from the game, so she has like a tissue stuck up her nose, and Longo's got half her face like, squashed, and those two getting stuck in the wars. But Jale actually played off the bench in this game, which I thought was an interesting adjustment as well. There were quite a few changes out there from Paul Temple in this game, but the changes worked. They got a victory. They, like I said, they're actually turning out to be quite a decent defensive team. They're not a decent attacking team. They're not creating, well, they're creating some chances, but they're not necessarily creating high caliber enough chances. And they're certainly not taking enough of those chances. Like the shooting just hasn't been good enough to convert half chances, which is absolutely what they need to build towards. Like that's the work on for them. But like, Liam Gillian turning up after All Whites camp with a bit of pop, that's confidence, right? That's someone who's been vindicated in his career. He's had an international cap. He's had a great experience. Just spent a week training with Chris Wood. He's feeling on top of the world. He's coming in and bringing that back to his club. Confidence also comes when you've lost 3 games in a row. You're feeling a little bit wobbly. You're not quite sure what direction the team's going in. Then you get a grinding, gritty victory. Away from home as well. It wasn't necessarily an away game because of Unite round stuff, but it was a neutral ground game. It was a game in Australia, which is, you remember last season, something they had horrific trouble trying to get results from those games. They kept losing by single goal margins in those away games. Well, here they won by a single goal margin. So confidence is going to stem from that as well. And we'll see where they can build from this platform now moving forward with the confidence of a victory. They got 3 points on the board.